Welcome to Crossroads. The Monroe Doctrine is back, or as it's now being called, the Monroe Doctrine. It's the new name for it. And the United States is making this abundantly clear, even saying, quote, "This is our hemisphere." Nobody, if you're not here, you don't belong. Meanwhile, the decision on whether the president needs permission from Congress to levy tariffs, it's now in the hands of the Supreme Court, and Trump saying we made a crazy amount of money with tariffs. Also, on another topic, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is dropping his bid for re-election amid criticism and investigations over the Somali scammer rings stealing a ridiculous amount of money. Also, I'll be going to these topics a lot more today. Make sure to hit the like button, leave a comment. Let's get started. All right, first of all, the Monroe Doctrine is fully back on. The United States is actually enforcing it now and going at it. And what you're watching in Venezuela is just one small piece of probably what's to come. The United States is also making it clear this is the new agenda, frankly. Secretary of State Marco Rubio appeared on NBC News' Meet the Press saying, "This is our hemisphere, and President Trump will not allow our security to be threatened." Watch.
The most immediate changes are the ones that are in the national interest of the United States. That's why we're involved here, because of how it applies and has a direct impact on the United States. The first steps are securing what's in the national interest of the United States and also beneficial to the people of Venezuela. And those are the things that we're focused on right now. No more drug trafficking, no more Iran Hezbollah presence there, and no more using the oil industry to enrich all our adversaries around the world and not benefiting the people of Venezuela, or frankly benefiting the United States and the region. This is the Western Hemisphere. This is where we live, and we're not going to allow the Western Hemisphere to be a base of operation for adversaries, competitors, and rivals of the United States.
Have specific oil companies?
We also want to see that oil and the proceeds from it.
Now, just digging into this a bit, when he says no more drug trafficking, it seems the United States is going to do something about the drug traffickers. Now, look, people are talking about Venezuela, obviously. The cocaine Venezuela had, because they mainly traded cocaine. Their cocaine comes from Colombia. They were just the traffickers. What does that mean? It means that if there's no more drugs, the drugs are still there. The traffickers are gone. They're probably going to go in and blow up the drug labs in Colombia. Trump says they already have them over-targeted. They know where all of them are. The president there, Petro, he's not very happy with Trump right now. He's also saying, "Come and get me," effectively. And Trump might come and get him. We'll have to see what Trump does, but that could be the next one, actually. Also, with Mexico, of course, and the drug traffickers there and the cartels, Trump could very likely go after the cartels. And most likely what this will look like, they'll bomb the labs, they'll bomb the areas where they have, of course, drugs being made, as they were doing again in Venezuela, and probably do targeted attacks of leadership decapitation against the cartel leaders. Trump has stated publicly already they know all of them, they know where they live, they know about them. And the Mexican government is basically just protecting them right now. We'll have to see if that changes. There's some other interesting things here, though. He says no more Iran, Hezbollah presence there. Iran actually has a lot of influence throughout Latin America, especially through Hezbollah. There were actually Hezbollah training camps in Tijuana, as early as I knew of them back in maybe 10 years ago. I was told by some good sources that Hezbollah was actually training the cartels on how to build improvised explosive devices, IEDs. They also assisted some of the cartels on tunnel building, teaching them technology for that. On the other point, though, Hezbollah is a political force throughout Latin America. They even have political parties. In Peru, for example, there's a Hezbollah political party. They have a lot of influence in Latin America. And on the point of oil also, Venezuela was kind of, they were the Saudis of the South, as you can think of them. And Venezuelan oil also became one of the big businesses for, regional trade and so on. Without that trade and other trade that was taking place, we could actually see a very rapid collapse of the Cuban communist regime. And Trump is suggesting that might be the next plan in order. Marco Rubio is very strongly pushing for this. Cuba could collapse just by proxy of Venezuela no longer trading with them. This could be the end of the Cuban communist regime as well. We'll have to see how it unfolds. Now, look, on this point, though, after President Trump hinted at his next possible moves, we'll have to see where it goes, suggesting something needs to be done with the cartels in Mexico, what would happen. A U.S. spy jet was just seen circling parts of Mexico. And the Express UK says this. It says a U.S. Navy plane has been spotted circling near a part of Mexico's coast after President Trump threatened military action against the country. And this is a P-8 Poseidon. It was detected on flight tracking websites conducting surveillance and reconnaissance missions off Tijuana, just south of California. Was lived there. Just head south of San Diego. Tijuana is the first city there. It's not a very nice place, but because it's more of a border town, a lot of trafficking goes through there, especially maritime-based trafficking. And so having a P-8 Poseidon there doing reconnaissance, probably they're looking for boats, probably they're looking for semi-submersibles. The cartels have like semi-submarine things they use. The P-8 Poseidon would be able to track those. Now, notes it launched from Naval Air Station Whidbey Island in Washington, flying over Oregon and California, then looped several times off the coast of Mexico and Southern California before returning to base. It says the P-8 has been used to monitor suspicious ships and movements in the ocean, as it's equipped with these sensors that can detect targets on the surface and underwater. Now, some might question, why is it going so far north? It's because the cartels are not just going to go like this. They're not just going to, take a little speedboat, 20 miles up and drop it off in San Diego. Oftentimes, they'll go out to sea, go north, and then come in at another point. If you get further away from the border checkpoints, you're also further away from Border Patrol. And so they would be going further north, especially given the fact that San Diego is such a massive naval population, huge Coast Guard presence, and in other words, if you're a designated terrorist, you don't want to go there. So the cartels would very likely be trafficking further north, and because the border is so tight right now, a lot of it's going to be maritime trafficking. That's why it matters so much. Now, look, on another topic, speaking about Venezuela and Colombia, you might remember, shortly before the operations and the raid that led to the capture of Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela, Maduro was posting videos himself dancing around, taunting Trump, come and get me, haha, come and get me. And Trump did. Trump did come and get him. And now the president of Colombia is actually doing the same thing. Daily Express says this. Colombian President Gustavo Petro issued a stark three-word warning to President Donald Trump amid ramped-up attacks against alleged drug trafficking in Latin America. He said, come get me. Come get me, Petro said. I'm waiting for you here. Don't threaten me. I'll wait for you right here if you want to. And he continued saying, quote, I don't accept invasions, missiles, or assassinations, only intel. Come speak with me here. Come speak here with intelligence, and we'll receive you and talk face to face with facts, not lies. Stop getting lied to by Colombian political mafias who condemned us to 700,000 deaths and made us the world's most unequal country. Interesting. Now, the big question is, will Trump do it? Will Trump come and get him? Or will he go there and have a nice little talk? We'll have to find out. Or he'll have to find out. We'll have to see. On that point, also, Colombia is getting ready for Trump to come and get him, apparently. They're actually now rallying up their military, moving it to the border with Venezuela. Security operations, they're calling it. Actually, on that point, we could have been involved in a very big war in Venezuela. The Venezuelan army was fully mobilizing, preparing for a full-scale war with the United States. And just like a knight with very heavy armor and a nice little arrow right through the eye hole, Trump went and just decapitated the system. So we avoided a full-scale war. Very likely the same thing would be in Colombia. But most notably also, Colombian President Petro is calling on the United Nations to take action against Trump. And this could be where things get interesting. The United Nations right now is kind of rallying its forces to do something about Trump and Venezuela and probably Cuba as well, and maybe Mexico, but probably the soonest will be Colombia. Petro is actually calling on the United Nations to step in, protect him, act against Trump. They're arguing that a country going in and doing regime change like this is not, they claim, not different from, for example, Russia invading Ukraine. That grabbing up resources, like America right now, we're going to grab all their oil resources and their rare earth minerals. They're arguing that you can't really do that. Can we? I don't know. On that point, the United States is saying, well, look, we built it. We should be able to have access to it. We'll see what happens. Very likely what will happen is there will be a new wave of elections in Venezuela. There will be a putting down of the military, a pulling out of the weeds, so to speak, of the system that still exists there. New elections, and America is very likely going to have trade deals with Venezuela. Much stronger trade deals. This could also push out the Chinese Communist Party. They have a massive amount of investment in Venezuela. I mean, you're talking tens of billions just over the last few years. Now, like another topic, though, after Maduro was stripped of power, it's possible we could see yet another regime change. This one in Iran. Iran could be also going in the way of Maduro. Be talking more about this after we come back from a quick break.
All right, just to pause here for a super quick moment. You are, of course, watching Crossroads with Joshua Philipp. I'm just here to share a message about American Hartford Gold, my own personal gold and silver bullion dealer. Now, obviously, the recent tariffs have made the markets super turbulent and volatile. With every new piece of tariff news, the markets seem to either crash up or crash down. And of course, it's worth mentioning that these conditions don't only affect Wall Street. They affect all of us through our investments and our retirement accounts. That's why I'd like to introduce you to a company that I trust and I myself use to secure my own savings, American Hartford Gold. They specialize in helping Americans move our assets into something tangible, into something you can actually hold, which is physical gold and physical silver, two precious metals that act as a hedge against all those decisions being made in Washington, D.C. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. They have thousands of 5-star reviews, and they make the whole buying process super simple. Your metals can be shipped directly to your door, or you can transfer your current retirement account to a tax-advantaged gold IRA. And the best part is that right now, American Hartford Gold is offering an exclusive offer. When you call them today and you mention the name Joshua, you could receive up to $15,000 in free silver with your initial investment. Take advantage of their special offer. You can either just call them at 877-260-2764 or text Joshua to 65532. All their information will also be down in the description box below. And now, back to Crossroads.
Welcome back. After Maduro was stripped of power, it's now possible we could see regime change, this time in Iran. And we might not be involved with this one, we don't actually know. But basically, here's what's happening. BBC says, a wave of protests sparked by Iran's failing economy has continued, it says, for a 9th day as President Donald Trump renewed his threats of U.S. intervention. And it's looking bad there, at least for the regime. They actually have a water crisis taking place, especially in Tehran, the main city. The economy is just in a downward free fall spiral. They're on their way out, effectively. And for a long time, the Iranian regime has had a very rough relationship with its people. There's a deep divide between the leadership and the people in Iran, and there has been for a very long time. They haven't necessarily had full control of the country, at least through that. And let's say the straw that broke the camel's back in this case is the fact that people's quality of life is just detrimental right now because of, again, droughts, water shortage, but especially because of just the lack of a functioning economy. Now, notice that videos published online on Monday showed demonstrations in the capital of Tehran and the southwestern city of Yazouj. And it's a human rights activist who said protests have taken place in 26 of the country's 31 provinces since last week, and that at least 19 protesters and 1 member of the security forces have been killed. On that point also, typically once the regime starts killing protesters, when you have popular revolts like this, it makes it worse. And it is very likely the regime, by doing so, is going to make the situation much worse for itself. They don't really have a way out on this, with the exception of maybe foreign intervention. One big question is going to be if the United States intervenes. The other big question is going to be, will Russia or China intervene? Because Russia or China would be the only 2 countries that would probably do that. The United States on its side could do something. Would we? Probably not. Could Israel do it? They could, but they're not necessarily that popular there. So it wouldn't work out too well. We'll see what happens. We'll see what the United States does on this, but very likely it looks like at least the leadership could flee the country. And President Trump has even warned that Iranian authorities could be hit very hard if more protesters die. This was on Sunday with reporters aboard Air Force One. Watch.
Though there's been protesters killed in Iran, you said we were locked and loaded, ready to go. What is the line there for when the U.S. is going to get involved in those protests?
We'll take a look. We're watching it very closely. If they start killing people like they have in the past, I think they're going to get hit very hard by the United States.
So hit very hard. It could be more sanctions. We don't really know. It could be a new bombing. It could be that the U.S. strategic bombers could make another flight. We'll have to see. Or it could be maybe a one-stop shop trip to New York City. We will have to wait and see what that looks like. Now, look, the decision on whether the president needs permission from Congress to levy tariffs is also now in the hands of the U.S. Supreme Court. It's not clear which way they're going to go. Many people, including myself, would say that constitutionally, the president does have pretty much unilateral authority to do this. But there are other arguments and new precedent that's been established. It is not clear which way the Supreme Court's going to go on this. And they could make it so Congress has to approve tariffs. Congress hasn't approved much, let's put it that way. And so for Congress to have to approve tariffs, basically all the tariffs would go away, probably. And Trump is arguing that no, the president has this ability. In fact, it was one of the founding ideas of what the president of the United States even does, going back to the early parts of the American Republic. Now, like ahead of this also, Trump spoke about the amount of money the United States has brought in so far through the tariffs. This is him on Truth Social. He says, "We have taken in and will soon be receiving more than $600 billion in tariffs. But the fake news media refuses to talk about it because they hate and disrespect our country and want to interfere with the upcoming tariff decision, one of the most important ever of the United States Supreme Court. Because of tariffs," he says, "our country is financially and from a national security standpoint far stronger and more respected than ever before." He said, "God bless America." President Donald J. Trump. Now look, $600 billion, that's a lot of money. That is a lot of Somali scam rings operating. And of course, $600 billion, some would argue that tariffs are just taxes on goods. A lot of times the companies kind of eat the costs. And, you know, there is a big question of who is paying for it. Some would argue the businesses in America are paying for it. The mom and pop shops are paying for it. The importers are paying for it. It's those guys paying a lot of it right now. For the most part, it's not the manufacturers eating the costs. Some are. A lot of them are not. It's across the board. For the most part, though, the average American is not necessarily paying more for goods. And so the consumer, the normal, regular guy buying stuff in the stores, is not really feeling it as much. Now, on that point, the tariffs are part of a much broader agenda, though. Bring back American factories. Bring back American manufacturing. We need it not just to have a functioning economy, we also need it for wartime production if there was ever a war that broke out. Because a lot of times factories, kind of switch jobs, so to speak. And instead of making cars, they're making jets, or maybe not these days, but making tanks or something like that. Oftentimes, the factories change the nature of the manufacturing for wartime production. On the point, though, of the $600 billion in tariffs, Trump is also suggesting we can basically get rid of income tax, or for the most part. We'll see if that happens. They are noting that at the very least, this coming tax season, a while away now, that because of the changes made to the tax laws, a lot of Americans are going to pay a lot less in taxes, and you probably get a bigger return because most people do not adjust their filings or withholdings on the nature of that. So we'll see what happens. In terms of the Supreme Court, it could go either way. The Supreme Court could basically overturn most of Trump's tariffs overnight. If that does happen, you're also going to see a lot of companies sue the United States and sue whoever they can to recover lost money from what they would view as unlawful tariffs. So this could go very heavy one way or very heavy the other way for the United States, depending on what the Supreme Court does. This could have a very big impact one way or the other. Now, look, also on another topic, New York has a brand new mayor, and he's now starting to launch policies in his new vision for the city. The Gothamist said this: "Zoran Mamdani has promised New Yorkers free and fast buses, along with free childcare, like in the Somali communities, for all children from 6 months of age to 5 years old. And he hopes to pay for them with an increase to the state's corporate tax rate for large companies and additional income tax for the relatively small slice of New Yorkers earning over $1 million. Or as he and others with him said, white people. So we will see what happens. On this point, Trump did actually meet with Zoran in the Oval Office, and after a closed-door meeting, we don't know what was actually stated during that meeting. Trump came out seeming very happy. Zoran Mamdani seemed like they actually did have a good conversation. We don't know what they talked about. And Trump did suggest that he thinks that when Mamdani starts putting his policies in place, that a lot of what he said would happen with these socialist policies will not come to pass, and that he will probably be much lighter. Many people say, well, there goes New York City. As someone who's lived here since 2008, I can tell you, New York has had a lot of basically socialist mayors. Mamdani's kind of the first public one. A lot of them were socialist. Bill de Blasio was with the Sandinistas, okay? Like he was with the Sandinistas. And the other big point in New York City is that the city council is oftentimes more radical than the mayors. The city council is much more socialist probably than Mamdani. And so the city's already had a lot of these things in place. We'll see to what extent he actually changes things. We'll see what he does. And we'll see how they pay for it. The other big problem you're looking at, of course, is when you increase the corporate tax rates and increase taxes on people earning over $1 million. A lot of the wealthy New Yorkers have at least 2 homes. That's why they call them snowbirds. They go down to Florida. A lot of them also have houses in other areas. During COVID, a lot of people just moved out into one of their other homes and left New York. That happened very commonly. And so it is possible that some businesses might just close shop. The other reality is because of remote work these days, because of the fact that you can have a company set up basically anywhere and function just like you were in New York, you don't have to be in New York to run a company. And what happened post-COVID is a lot of businesses that had offices in New York, they just never reopened them. They just kept people working remotely. They kept things out of state. And if you increase the taxes on them, there's already not a lot of incentive for them to come back in the first place. To increase the weight of saying, hey, probably a bad idea to come back, you're probably going to watch a lot of businesses either leave or not return. So we'll see to what extent he implements these policies. Good old economics never fails. One day they'll learn, maybe. On another topic, though, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, he's dropping his bid for re-election, and this is amid criticisms and investigations over the old Somali scammer rings. And AP says this: Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, Democrat's 2024 candidate for vice president, is ending his bid for a 3rd term as governor amid President Donald Trump's relentless focus on a fraud investigation into child care programs in the state. Yes, they're investigating child care programs, not massive, $15 to $19 billion Somali scam rings. Which actually was not just childcare, it was also scamming like COVID funds, it was also scamming Medicare, it was also scamming just everything they could apparently. It says here though, less than 4 months after announcing his re-election campaign, Walz said Monday that negative attention and Republican attacks, those mean Republicans attacking him, have contributed, it says, to an extraordinarily difficult year for our state. So difficult, making it says impossible for him to serve full time as governor while also being a candidate to keep his job. He said, quote, every minute that I spend defending my own political interest would be a minute I can't spend defending the people of Minnesota against the criminals of prayer and generosity and cynics who want to prey on our differences, Walz said at the state capitol. And then said, so I've decided to step out of this race, and I'll let others worry about the election while I focus on the work that's in front of me for the next year. So he's not like leaving his position as governor, but he's also not going to be campaigning. And things are not looking good for Minnesota right now. One of the reasons it's not looking good, again, okay, so a lot of focus is on the Somali scam rings. A lot of focus is also on Tim Walz and other officials because, they were effectively creating the conditions that allowed for fraud to take place. Now, Tim Walz has noted, look, when we find criminals, we arrest them. When there's investigations and people get found to be, committing crimes, they go to jail. Others would argue, no, whistleblowers have come out and said that whistleblowers who tried warning about fraud actually were punished. Whistleblowers have come out saying that when they actually pointed to fraud, they were silenced. Whistleblowers have come out and said that actually there was a large-scale system, even within the local government, that was preventing investigations into fraud, punishing people who found it, and also, notably, facilitating it by allowing it to continue even when it was known. And so we'll see to what extent, anyone's held accountable, if at all. But it does seem to be the case that someone could be held accountable. Congress is investigating it, as is the Justice Department. And frankly, what's the greatest force of political action in America? You tell me. What is the greatest force of political action in America? Well, because we're a good old republic, public attention is the greatest force of political action. Public demand is the greatest force of political action. And if the public is hyper-focused on Minnesota and scam and fraud and things that allow this to happen, they're probably going to act on that public focus and do something about it, because if they don't do something, it damages trust. So very likely you will watch aggressive investigations, which are already underway. And on that point too, I've said it again, I'll say it again. This is not just going to be Minnesota. Fraud of this nature is taking place all across the United States. And you have guys like Elon Musk coming out, others saying, this is probably the greatest amount of fraud ever committed in human history in terms of measurable theft. And it's getting there. It's actually, if you're talking $18-19 billion, you're talking like an entire economy, basically. You're talking a GDP of an entire country in fraud. And if you're talking about not just one type of fraud, multiple types of fraud, multiple states, some are suggesting you could be looking at a good chunk of American tax dollars just paying for fraud, being stolen through fraud. That's how big this could get. We're at the tip of the iceberg right now, and we'll see what's below it, hopefully, or maybe just some of it at least. But a lot's going to be going on. I'll be talking about it here. So questions, comments, anything you want to talk about, leave it in the chat. Let's jump into some questions. Let's see here. All right, first one, Norway for Trump. You're saying back to the founders' ideas. A great way to celebrate the 250th anniversary for the Declaration of Independence. No more income tax. I'm a simple man with simple demands, and no income tax would be one of my favorite things. What simplicity, right? Tariffs are not as good if you're of course doing imports. If you run a business focused heavy on imports, it's probably very bad for you. A lot of this is going to change though once the factories start coming back, because the way that foreign companies are being given to get around the tariffs is they're being told, look, just start a factory in the United States. Start local production. It'll save you on shipping costs. For a corporation, they don't care if they hire people in their country or people outside their country. It doesn't matter too much. I mean, depending on them. If you're talking about Chinese manufacturing, it's a little different. But for the most part, a lot of countries, with the exception of maybe India or China, right? A lot of the production being done could be done just as easily in the United States, and it would not be detrimental to the corporation handling the production. It would actually technically probably save them money, with the exception of differences in income and minimum wage or whatever they pay people. But we'll have to see. Another question here. Martin McKenzie, you're saying, was the Monroe Doctrine ever made a law? No, it wasn't. But that doesn't mean the president can't use it to clean bad foreign actors from the hemisphere like cartels in China. Yeah, the Monroe Doctrine is interesting because I think it was just in a letter. It was just it was just an idea that was expressed. As you note, it was never like a law. It was never some congressional act or something like that. It was never really that. It was more just a concept of the United States. No more, at the time, this was mid-1800s, No more European colonies in the Americas. No Spain, you can't have another colony. No Britain, you can't have another colony. We saw how that all worked out for you, okay? No more colonies. And America had colonies too. But the Philippines was a colony, the Samoas was a colony, Saipan, still actually an American, as Samoa. You actually still have a lot of colonies. America still has a lot of colonies. Puerto Rico, for example, quite a few. But, the idea was no more new ones, right? No more new ones. Hawaii was a colony. On that front, we'll have to see what this means in terms of the reinforcement of it. Trump is basically saying that it's back on the table. It's now not the Monroe Doctrine, it's the Monroe Doctrine. He actually said it. You had Milei down in Argentina state this. It's the Monroe Doctrine, and Milei is very happy about this. He's a very strong Trump supporter down in Argentina. What is this going to actually look like, though? This is going to be not just America killing cartel members and getting rid of Hezbollah and so on. As you mentioned, a lot of it's going to be pushing out China. Now, the reason why Venezuela matters so much is, well, it's a few reasons, right? One is, okay, this is going to be the big one. This is going to be the big one with Venezuela. Election technology. Okay, I'm just going to leave it at that. Election technology based in Venezuela. The ability to fully investigate it means investigations in Venezuela. We cannot do that because, well, Maduro, you wouldn't be able to do it. The books are going to be open now. And we will see what happens with this. Venezuela is the necessary place to go to deal with that. We'll see what happens. If they act on it, if they ever do anything, but that's going to be a big one. It's going to be a very big one, especially if you get people stepping forward or getting plea deals within the Venezuelan leadership, because they would be the ones who would know. They would be the ones who would know, okay? And that's going to be a giant domino effect through a lot of the world, by the way. I don't know if anybody wants to touch that domino because of the amount of things that would fall were you to touch it. So we will see what happens with that. The other big thing is that Venezuelan oil and drug trade was working as a supporting factor for a lot of intergovernmental operations, I guess you could call them. There was a intergovernmental kind of cooperation agreement that was formed mainly by Hugo Chavez and Fidel Castro with the purpose of pushing America out of Latin America. Fidel Castro called this as a program to get rid of the gringos, he called it, right? To get rid of the gringos, they called it. And the gringos are back, by the way. And so you're going to watch a lot of countries that were dependent on some of that trade probably not do so well. Cuba is going to be the biggest hit because basically post-Soviet Union collapse, Cuba was cut off financially from basically everything, and it was Venezuela that bailed them out. The Venezuelan regime under Chavez, after breaking from the United States, established trade that basically kept Cuba running. Cuba's going to go next, I can tell you right now. And my prediction is this. You're going to watch the same thing happening in Cuba as you're watching in Iran. What does that look like? America doesn't have to act. Nobody has to do anything. Once people's quality of life becomes bad enough, people will take to the streets and revolt. Now, some would argue that the pressure valve preventing change was mass migration. If you're a person in Cuba and you're deeply unhappy with the regime, you have two options. What are they? Leave the country, come to America, get free health care and a free house and everything else. Great. Or stay there and protest and risk getting shot on the street. Which are you going to do, okay? If you remove the first option, you're probably going to take the second option. And like you're watching in Iran, once pressure builds up to a certain extent, it has to go somewhere, okay? Mass migration was the pressure valve. You turn the valve and you let off the steam, right? You turn the valve, you let off the steam. But if you remove that valve, the steam has to stay inside, and it's going to blow up at some point if you don't let it out. What will happen, and people have argued this, one of the more detrimental factors of mass migration is it prevented people who were disenfranchised with their system from staying and changing their country in the ways they believed they should be changed. Once you eliminate the ability to have them leave, they will stay there and demand change. And so you're going to watch that happen in Cuba, I think, very quickly. I would actually give it, if you want to have my prediction, I give it a couple months. I will give it a couple months. All right, remember this, right? Take a note of this. 2 months. You're going to start watching civil unrest in Cuba because the economy is going to start feeling it. Right? Watch this, okay? That's my prediction. I'm sorry, and the last point with what's happening in Venezuela is, of course, they were the beachfront to bring Chinese influence into the region. They were the testing ground for the Belt and Road Initiative, and they also created policies to get rid of the United States. And so they were the ones who brought China into Latin America, basically. And so you have to deal with Venezuela to begin bringing things back. They were the Jenga block, as we talked about yesterday. You pull that out, a lot's going to collapse. And you're going to start watching things change, I think, drastically throughout Latin America now. Let's see, Enthos38, you're saying, would like to see Central and South American countries freed from cartels and our enemies. To see the U.S. assisting our neighbors in our hemisphere is a good thing for all of us. It's true, actually. You know, Mexico was a great country when I was a kid. We used to go hunting in Tijuana and stuff. Quail and pheasant, if anyone's curious. I used to go with my grandpa and stepdad. It was not a bad place. A lot of guys would go to Tijuana on the weekends. A lot of surfers would go down there. There's some really good waves in different parts of Mexico. And a lot of Latin America was very nice. Venezuela was a great country. Venezuela was a fantastic country. In fact, I know I have extended family who used to go down there like fishing. Sports fishing is amazing. Sports fishing there is incredible. It's not overfished like a lot of areas. I know guys who used to go down there and do marlin fishing. Venezuela used to be a big stop for that. A lot of, wealthy people go down there, yachting people go down there, beautiful coastlines, beautiful country, very wealthy country. A lot of Latin America was very nice. Cuba, before communism, was a fantastic country, beautiful country. A lot of these areas are really, really nice, but gangs and cartels and socialism screwed it all up. And it could go back to being very nice if they get rid of those three things, right? If they get rid of the gangs, if they get rid of the cartels, if they get rid of socialism, and they basically get rid of criminality effectively and corruption, you're going to watch these places become great, really great. Some of the towns and areas in Latin America are beautiful, really nice areas. The problem is it's just not safe. And a lot of that has to do with drug money and gangs being able to do whatever the heck they want. And the lack of enforcement against them because of political corruption. Massive amounts of political corruption. Clean that up, and you're also going to fix a lot of the mass migration problems. Because, look, a lot of people coming here from these countries, they still love their cultures. A lot of them would be happy to stay in their countries were it not for, the inability to live peaceful lives. And for them to, again, have good functioning economies, which part of the return of the Monroe Doctrine, according to Trump and the White House, is also going to be deals to rebuild manufacturing in Latin America. They're going to get rid of the drug money and bring in new industry, functioning industry, first world type industry. When that happens, I believe you're going to see the quality of life throughout Latin America very much improve. It would already be very good if it weren't for the cartels and gangs. If they start cleaning that up, life there is going to be very good. You will not have a reason for people to want to leave. And so things are going to change quite a bit if they move forward with it. So we'll see. Wilma Eden, you're saying Venezuela's oil business was made by American oil companies going back to the 1920s. You could say the oil companies have to have a say in Venezuela. Yeah, They did. So yeah, you're full on right. So Venezuela used to be a huge U.S. ally. They were an ally all through the Cold War. They were not close to the Soviets. They were very much aligned with the United States. The United States even helped build up some of their military. If you were a communist there, you actually risked being persecuted. So they actually would crush communist dissent. And then basically what happened, I believe it was like 80s and 90s. Now that goes back to that, right? 80s and 90s, the oil industry wasn't doing so well. They made a lot of bad economic decisions, and then quality of life impacted. They brought in Hugo Chavez saying, "Hey, we're going to fix it all, and I'm going to give everybody a free pony," and so on. You know, the old socialist promise, right? Vote for me, and I'll make all your wildest dreams come true. Surprise! It's just a dream. Nothing's going to happen. So Hugo Chavez came in, made the stupidest policies you could ever make, and then it destroyed the economy. A lot of the impact of it, though, was only felt when Maduro came into power. And so, Chavez kind of started the collapse. He put a lot of his guys in charge of the oil industry. They were absolute morons, and they destroyed the economy. And you had one of the greatest reductions in wealth of any country outside of war. Like I think among the top 5 in human history outside of war happened in Venezuela. You had people go from having very good quality of life, very wealthy people, to just detrimental collapse of your ability to live a peaceful and comfortable life. The reduction in wealth there was drastic and horrible for a lot of people. And then the gangs came in. Then crime started. And you had a lot of people who grew up like that, and they saw that. Their lives from the, let's say, 80s or 90s, you're talking people 40, 50 years old, what they witnessed and the changes in the country they witnessed would have been like if you grew up in California and you, maybe you want to go the way it's gone. I'm half joking. You grew up in California and then it turned into Tijuana, basically. It would have been that drastic of a change in your quality of life, basically. And so, yeah, America built a lot of that, though. It's interesting now America's now saying, hey, remember how we built that stuff for you? We want it back. You're going to watch the United States probably establish a lot of business there. Some people are saying, well, okay, a big question, okay? If there's going to be a regime change in Venezuela, America's overseeing the regime change. The problem is, look, they captured Maduro. The country still is Maduro's system. The entire government is still Maduro's system. The entire military, for the most part, at least the officers, still Maduro's system. The gangs are still there. They're very powerful. The cartels are still there, very powerful. How are you just going to capture one guy and say, okay, let's see you elect a non-corrupt leader who's not part of that system when the entire government is that? It's not going to happen, okay? You have to go in there, you have to arrest people or blow them up, I don't know. And you have to bring in decent law enforcement to at least quell the cartels and the gangs so they don't destroy the country like they've done throughout the entire region. And you're going to have to oversee a transition of power. America probably will do that. What's that going to look like? I'm okay, take my word for it. This is my guess. I would assume we're going to have some degree of military presence in Venezuela. I do think we're going to do it. I don't think there's any way to not do it. And the reality, and I'm not saying I support it or don't support it, but I'm saying this is probably what's going to happen. Because if you go into a country and you literally kidnap their leader and you're saying, hey, things are going to be better for you now, you kind of have some responsibility to make sure it doesn't fall into chaos, right? You kind of have some degree of responsibility if the place just lights itself on fire and implodes. Like, that's kind of your fault if you've done that. So America is, and especially as America is trying to reestablish order throughout Latin America, Venezuela is going to be kind of like the testing ground where America has to demonstrate not only will we get rid of the corruption, we're going to make things better. Venezuela's going to be the testing ground for it. You're not going to be able to do that without military presence. That'll probably happen. The other thing, too, is American resources, rebuilding the oil industry there, taking it for America. That means pushing out China, by the way. You're probably going to watch China try to file international lawsuits against the United States saying, well, you're taking what I rightfully stole, basically. Or what they built through the Belt and Road Initiative. You're going to watch a lot of stuff like that, too. We'll see what happens, but it's going to be interesting, I think. And on that point, too, Trump could work with other countries. In my personal take, I don't think any other country in that area would have a strong enough military or the willingness to go in and occupy Venezuela, and it also would not look good. We in America, we think, well, Latin America, they're different countries, and they don't all like each other, okay? They don't all like each other, and so it wouldn't look good. America is going to be the only one that can do this, is the hard reality. And we've kind of now taken the responsibility for it, so I don't think there's going to be a way out for the United States on this. I think that's what's going to happen. Ashley from California, you're saying, there was a guy in an interview that made a good point. What does it matter if the U.S. is going for oil? What do you think the Chinese and Russians wanted? Yeah, and that's what some of the people down there were saying, some of the opposition leaders. They were like, invade Venezuela? Venezuela was already invaded. It was invaded by China. It was invaded by Hezbollah and Iran. It was invaded by Russia. It was invaded by Cuba. Nobody thinks about Cuba, but Cuban intelligence is a huge influence throughout Latin America. Cuba does not have a powerful military. They do not have a powerful economy. But their intelligence operations are really, really influential in Latin America. And they're also very much tied in with the facilitation of the drug trade throughout Latin America. Cuba's, and working with other countries like China and Iran especially. Because a lot of money, and people don't think about this, a lot of drug money is terrorism, is money for terrorism. It does tie into that industry. And so global terrorism, drugs, and socialism are all intertwined very deeply. When they took Chavez, or when they took Maduro, I'm sorry, they actually said that a lot of the forces that were killed were Cuban forces around him. So Chavez kind of brought that in. Maduro was handpicked by Chavez, and basically Cuba has built huge footholds within Venezuela. So you're going to watch that too. One more point on that. There's actually a lot of weird stuff going on in Latin America too. This was one of the discussions in Brazil. This was one of the concerns raised by the opposition leaders in Venezuela. This is known in that region. It's not really known in the United States. Cuba also has placed a lot of its people as the generals in some of these countries. And so you'll have like the country as a military, the country has key political arms, but the people running it are from Cuba, and they're regarded as like Cuban spies. Cuba has been able to puppeteer a lot of countries with help from China and Russia. And so on that front, it's a problem in Brazil. I'll tell you right now, it's a big problem in Brazil. And it's known among Brazilians to an extent. It's not really talked about in the United States almost at all, the influence Cuba has through these things. But it's a big deal also in Venezuela. And so on this point to what you're saying, yeah, it's true. Venezuela was already invaded. Venezuela was already a puppet state. Venezuela was already controlled by foreign countries. And what Trump is doing going in there, yeah, he's invading, but the country was already invaded. You could view this as liberation, right? We didn't invade them, we liberated them, okay? And in that case, this might be true. Venezuela has been liberated. We'll see how it goes. Let's see here. Ashley from California. Oh, I'm sorry, I just had that one. Raf, you're saying, starts with believing that life is not fair because others have it easier. Instead of believing that you can make your own prosperity by working hard, you believe that others are responsible. Yeah, it's a big problem you have with life in general, right? When you're unhappy, who's responsible for it? You see people do one of two things. I'm unhappy because this person hurt me. I am unhappy because this person cheated me. I am unhappy because I can't do this and that and that. You can be mad at people your whole life and your condition will never improve. Blaming somebody for your unhappiness will never make them change. It might actually make things worse oftentimes. If you want to see something change, you actually have to do it yourself, okay? If you're unhappy because of a condition, you need to change it. You need to just change the condition, right? If you're unhappy because you're poor, you probably need to go out and, I mean, it sucks, but maybe get a second job or something like that if you have to. If you're unhappy because somebody wronged you or somebody has a trait you don't like, you're not going to change them. I mean, very rare, maybe in really rare cases can you change another person. If you want to see something change, you got to change yourself. That's just the way it is, right? And it's the only thing you really have power over. The only thing you can really have influence over is yourself. Easily at least. It's very hard to do it to other people. And so it's the same thing with, as Raf is saying here, with, socialism or communism and so on. Because you know what communist regimes do is they go into countries and say, look, you're poor, you're unhappy, yes, you're right. It's everybody else's fault. And what we're going to do is we're going to kill everybody else who's making you unhappy, and we're going to take all the stuff they took from you, and we're going to redistribute it. That's what they say. You're unhappy because of institutional racism, and the evil white people are the ones with all the money, so we're going to come in and take the homes from the white people and give you their homes. That's literally what's being said in New York, by the way, if that sounds crazy to you. In fact, the woman who was put in charge of this in New York, she actually has a video where she says this, that they're going, not exactly, but that white people will be more affected because they're going to do some eliminate private ownership thing for housing. It's the same thing you had in Russia. You're unhappy because some peasants have more money than other peasants. There's the kulaks, the wealthy peasants. You're unhappy because you know what? They have a better hold on the institutions. And if you want to be happy, let us have power. We're going to go in, murder them, take everything from them and give you some of it. Wow, you're going to be so happy now. Did that work out for them? No, it did not. It didn't work out for anybody. Because the reality with communism is people typically do well because they've gone out and worked hard and created wealth. If you just go in, kill them and take from them and then redistribute it, you'll find that the person who was creating wealth is no longer creating wealth. And what does that mean? It means the businesses fail. It means the industries fail. It means the guy who was propping up the world shrugs his shoulders, right? Like the book Atlas Shrugged. Great book and message, by the way. And Ayn Rand said something interesting in there that kind of stuck with me. In the book Atlas Shrugged, who was Atlas? It's the guys who strive. It's the guys who push themselves. It's the guys who are selfish and greedy. It's the guys who do things because it's theirs, because they own it, right? It's the guys who, and Ayn Rand talked about the virtue of selfishness, which I never thought about, but it made me think, actually. You could even say the virtue of private ownership. You care about something when it's yours. You want to build something when it's yours. You want to make something work when you take ownership of it, right? And so she was saying in the book, there's this guy building the railroad, and people are saying, why do you work so hard? Why do you care so much? And his response every time is because it's mine. It's mine. He'll work 80 hours a week to build his dream, to build the thing that is his. Now, what happens when you take a person like that and you say, this is no longer yours? This is no longer yours. The railroad is not yours. What are you going to do? Well, the guy whose motivation was selfish or the pursuit of money or whatever he was doing is no longer going to do it. It's not mine. Okay, I'm going to go work 20 hours a week or 40 hours a week. I'm not going to try. I'm not going to make an effort anymore. What happens to that industry? Just like Atlas holding up the sky, Atlas shrugs, and the whole sky comes falling down. That is the reality of socialism. As soon as you eliminate private ownership, people no longer feel a personal responsibility to anything. They no longer care to be responsible. Done. And, as Raf notes here, I fully agree with you, and I'll read it again. Instead of believing that you can make your own prosperity by working hard, you believe that others are responsible. It's a difference in terms of how we approach it, right? James Dyson, Josh, how many times do I have to remind you to watch Touch of Evil? James, I'm sorry, I still have not watched Touch of Evil. I will make a note of it on my phone as we speak, and I will watch it, okay? So, I'll do it in a minute, okay? That said, thank you all so much for being here. What do you think? Do you think it's a good idea for us to go down in Venezuela and do regime change? Do you think this is a good idea or a bad idea? Is it going to work out? I can tell you, I anticipated this and actually bought some Exxon stocks, and I made $50. I'm going to go buy myself a dirty oil money meal tonight. Anyways, thank you all for being here. Thank you so much. Join me again tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And until then, again, please take care of yourselves. As always, stay informed and stay free. Thank you.